Okay, well, welcome to the Capital Crimes Book Club with Laura Jensen Walker, our Sacramento author. Just start with a little bit of housekeeping to let you guys know about some of the upcoming things that we have going on. Saturday, August 13th, we're going to have our regular meeting. It's going to be a little more casual, though. We're just kind of getting to know each other, meet and greet. We're going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes about how capital crimes works and the things we're doing and some of the things we may be changing up a little bit. So that is Saturday, August 13th from 1 to 3 p.m. And I believe that's on Zoom. We also have our next book club, which is Tuesday, September 13th at 7 p.m., also on Zoom with our own Richard Meredith. We're going to be talking about The Crow's Nest. And if someone could put the link to buy the book in the chat, that would be great. And then we have Members Marketplace coming up on September 17th, a Saturday on Zoom at 1 p.m., where we're going to be featuring some videos from our members doing their elevator pitches for their books. And Laura kindly did one for hers to kind of show you how you can do it. I think we have the deadline coming up to register for that if you want to have your video included in that. I think it's the 17th.
16th Saturday, and we actually are, yeah, we're quite full, so it's exciting.
Oh,
It's
okay.
gonna be fun.
Oh, great. And then I wanted to remind you guys to, if you're a member of Capital Crimes, to be sure to activate your Sisters in Crime Trade Wing profile. It's a new platform. It's kind of like Facebook. We've started a group just for Capital Crimes members, so they can you guys can interact online without having to do our Zoom meetings or that sort of thing. And so it's a great way to maybe find beta readers or critique partners. One of our members has already said she's interested in going to VoucherCon 2023 in San Diego, and she's kind of looking for a roommate to share the hotel room. So that's a great place to get a lot of information and kind of interact with some of our members. So be sure to do that. And then a little bit about tonight's book club. I'm going to be talking with Laura for a little bit, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. If there's not too many of us, you can just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you. Or you can put your question in the chat box below, and be sure to put a Q in front of there so that our moderators know to grab that question, and they'll be sure to ask it at the end of our discussion. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce my very good friend, Laura Jensen Walker. She's a former newspaper reporter who has written more than 20 books in various genres, both fiction and nonfiction. A lover of mysteries since she read her first Trixie Belden in fourth grade. She is the author of 3 light-hearted cozy mystery novels, Murder Most Sweet and Deadly Delights, which are both part of the Bookish Baker mystery series, as well as Hope, Faith, and a Corpse, which is a Faith Chapel mystery. And Murder Most Sweet was nominated for a 2020 Agatha Award for Best First Novel. She also just released her self-published memoir, which she calls The Book of Her Soul, Good Girl, a memoir of overcoming rape, breast cancer, and fundamentalism. We'll be talking about that a little bit as well. Fun fact, Laura flew a typewriter across Europe in Uncle Sam's Air Force when she was in her 20s and lived in Oxfordshire, England for 3 years, where she became a lifelong tea-loving Anglophile. She now lives in Sacramento with her Renaissance husband, Michael, and their canine daughter, Melly. And on a personal note, I've known Laura since we both worked for Sacramento Bee Neighbors. I was a new reporter there, and Laura wrote a humorous column about relationships that I used to cut out and stick on my refrigerator because I thought they were so funny. Plus, I just moved in with the boyfriend who became my husband later, and it was tough. I really got to know her years later when we went to lunch with a mutual friend, Patty, and I got to hear all about her upcoming cozy mystery, Murder Most Sweet. And I told her that I'd always secretly wanted to write a murder mystery, and she told me to just do it. And so I honestly think that if it hadn't been for Laura and Teddy St. John, I might not have written my manuscript. So I owe it all to her.
Oh.
did you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about your, I guess we'll start with your Baker mystery series and maybe do a little bit of a reading?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Okay, as you mentioned, the very first one was called Murder Most Sweet. And actually, my initial title for that one had been Strangled in Silk. That was what I had come up with. And then I actually hired a developmental editor before my agent started pitching it because I wanted the best chance to get published. So she said, you know, this is all about this woman who she writes mysteries, but she's a baker. And we love food cozies. Food cozies are great. So you need to play up the food aspect. So that's when I came up with Murder Most Sweet, and she was completely right. And then thankfully that was nominated for an Agatha. And so in the Bookish Baker series, they're set in the town of Lake Pottawatomie, Wisconsin, fictional town. I'm actually from Racine, Wisconsin, which is the home of the best pastry on the planet, which is called Kringle, which Trader Joe's carries sometimes, and it's amazing. My hometown, I grew up on Kringle. As a little girl, we had Kringle all the time. And when we moved to Phoenix when I was 14, I'm like, where's the Kringle? They had no Kringle. So it was like, I had a very lovely childhood with all this Danish pastry. So I wanted to kind of do an homage to my childhood. And my aunt, who still lives in Racine, she used to talk about going, I'm going to Pottawatomie to play bingo. I'm going to I said, what? It was a casino. And so it was named after the Pottawatomie tribe. And so then I researched that and said, I love the name. So I researched them and thought, oh, I'm going to create this fictional town called Lake Pottawatomie, just a few miles from Racine. And so that's kind of that background. Teddy St. John is my main character, loosely modeled on me. When I first started writing, I'm a longtime breast cancer survivor. Actually, I'm coming up on 30 years cancer-free. So that's kind of amazing. I'm very grateful. But I had never, in any cozies or even mysteries I'd never read, I mean, you know, I don't recall ever reading about a breast cancer survivor, and not just a breast cancer survivor, but a woman who made the choice to go flat and not have reconstruction. And I thought, you know, I think that would be an interesting hook. And so that's how I started the book. And with Murder Most Sweet, the opening line was, I miss my breasts. And when I took that to, in fact, Jim was at the very first mystery conference I went to at Book Passage, in 2019, the summer of 2019. And I was peddling it there, and I showed it to a few different people. And one person was like, oh gosh, there's too much stuff about breasts. No. And then there was a man, an editor, and who he loved it. And he said, but I kept going, wait, is this a cozy? Because I just don't know if that's going to fly in a cozy, blah, blah, blah. So, but thankfully there was a younger woman, actually Lori, our King's daughter, Zoe Quinton, who's an incredible freelance editor. And she loved it. She says, oh, this is hot. This is so great. And I went, oh, yay, thank you. So Jim had to talk me down off a ledge because I was actually so upset because the first person said, well, it needs work. And I thought, but my agent's pitching it now. Oh no. And I was just distraught, but Jim talked me off the ledge. And so thankfully, and then within a few weeks from that, I got my agent called me at work. I was still working for the state parks. I was a research writer, and I got the call from my agent saying Crooked Lane has offered. And not only did they want Murder Most Sweet, they also want Hope, Faith, and a Corpse. So I had 2 books finished. They were both finished. And so I got a 3-book contract and to do a second Bookish Baker. And that's the book that we're talking about tonight, which is Deadly Delights. So so it was very fun. I had never written cozies before. I'd never written a mystery in my life. I had no clue I could write a mystery. Jennifer, I don't know if when you started yours, if you were like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never written a mystery. That's how I felt. I thought, oh my gosh. But I have a very good friend who lives in Michigan. She was the editor for many of my nonfiction books. And I said, I really want to write fiction again. I miss it, but I don't ever want to do chick lit again. Been there, done that. I'm finished. She goes, oh, Laura, you would be such a perfect cozy mystery writer. I said, really? And she goes, oh yeah, you love tea, you love England, blah, blah, blah. And you read mystery. And so the more I thought about it, I went to Barnes and Noble, grabbed a few cozies, started reading them, and went, maybe I could do this. And that's how it all began. And I did. So, and shockingly got nominated for an Agatha. So that was very incredible to me. And and like someone said, you don't need to win. You get to be an Agatha nominated author the rest of your life. And I went, okay, works for me.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'm going to tell you a little tiny bit about Deadly Delights, and then I'm going to do a short reading from that. So Deadly Delights is book 2. And I'm showing a close up so you can see it a little better. It's behind me as well. But in this book, it starts at the annual Lake Potawatomi baking contest. And Teddy, of course, being a great baker, enters the contest, and lots of treats and lots of good things. But the second, and this is not a surprise because it's in the copy, the back cover copy, so it's not like I'm giving away a spoiler. But one of the judges, she happens to go to the tent, and during a rainstorm the next day, and there was one of the judges dead, face planted in a coconut cream pie, and with Teddy's very distinctive embossed Norwegian rose malling rolling pin next to him, covered in blood. So that's kind of how that mystery all starts. But I'm going to go ahead and start off with chapter 1. Okay, I bent over to pick up my embossed rose malling rolling pin that had rolled off the table onto the ground. And as I did, someone whistled and pinched my butt. Instinctively, I whirled around and smacked the pincher with the rolling pin, which sent him staggering. "Ow, what'd you do that for?" said Lester Morris, rubbing his polyester suited arm. "Keep your hands to yourself, Les, you disgusting pig," and sorry excuse for a human being. The aging Lothario was the town lech, Lester the molester, we'd nicknamed him years ago in high school, who fancied himself quite the ladies' man, a fancy none of the women in Lake Potawatomi returned. Unfortunately, Les Morris, CPA and president of the Chamber of Commerce, also happened to be the head judge of our annual baking contest. Every August, our small southern Wisconsin town holds its version of the Great British Bake Off, with local bakers, including this year, yours truly, gathering in a large white vinyl tent in the park, competing to win the title of Best Baker of Lake Potawatomi. "I thought you'd be flattered," Les whined. "I mean, since you don't have breasts anymore, I figured you'd be happy to know you still have some womanly assets men find appealing." He gave me a flirtatious wink beneath his bushy white brows and licked his ancient lips. Is this guy for real? What century is this Neanderthal from? Remember, they dug him out of that time capsule from the 60s, along with copies of Playboy and pictures of Barbara Eden in her harem costume from I Dream of Jeannie. Pushing my flyaway dark brown curls behind my ears, I raised my distinctive Norwegian rolling pin and took a step toward the scrawny senior with the ill-fitting silver hairpiece. "Lester," I said in an even measured tone, "you need to shut up and move away before I knock that bad rug off your miserable bald head. Right here, right now." A couple women outside the end of the open baking tent tittered, and Lester flushed. "Atta girl, Teddy," said white-haired Fred Matson, one of my cookie fans, punching the air with his cane. "You tell him." More titters and chuckles came from the crowd. Unbelievable this guy can still get away with this crap. There had been complaints to the chamber and city hall over the years, but Lester's influence, he owns several commercial properties in town, and wealth always made them disappear. "Les, honey," his long-suffering wife Patsy called from her table in the center of the tent. "Can you come here, please? I need your help." "Sure, sweetie, I'll be right there." He hurried away from my table, glowering at me as he left. "Way to put Lester in his place," said my best friend and bookstore owner Shar Jorgensen as she high-fived me. "But you can kiss that first place baking trophy goodbye." And that's how we start.
Great. I love that one. And actually, one of my favorite lines is from the first book too. I love how you open your books. They're great. So what makes Teddy unique from the other amateur cozy sleuths is the fact that she's a breast cancer survivor and she's decided to go flat. So I was wondering if you could, and it's one of my favorite things about her. I think she was an inspiration, and cancer was kind of a wake-up call for her to give up her boring desk job and start writing. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how, your own experiences influenced that character.
Okay. Well, to be honest, it's kind of funny because some people say, "Oh, no, I never use anything autobiographical in my books. It's all completely made up." And other people go, "Oh yeah, I always take." Well, I do a little bit of both. In this instance, because I am a breast cancer survivor and did choose to go flat after, and I even used something that happened to me. I did have reconstructive surgery after my first mastectomy, which was diagnosed. I was diagnosed the day after my first wedding anniversary. It's like, "Happy anniversary, you have cancer." So a week later, I had a mastectomy, and I reconstructive surgery. But several years later, in the garage, lifting up something heavy, I didn't realize, but the implant burst. And I didn't realize till later, until I was getting ready to take a shower. And I'm like, what the heck is that flat tire? And so that's what it looked like. And so I just thought that that would be a great thing. I put that in for Teddy as well. And then years later, when I had some pre-cancerous lumps, I needed to have a second mastectomy. I went, I am never doing an implant again. It's just, I don't want to deal with it. So I thought, no, I wanted to show, and I was married, and thankfully I have a wonderful husband who, was not bothered by my lack of breasts and then breasts. But, I used to speak around the country on breast cancer issues. And I can't tell you the number of women I met whose partner and sometimes husband left them because they no longer had a breast or breasts, which was disgusting. And I just thought, there are single women out there. There are all kinds of women out there. And, I just wanted to show that you can still be considered attractive and vital and vibrant, and your breasts don't make a woman. So that's really what prompted me to write Teddy. I really wanted to show that and demonstrate that. So that's what, so she is me very much in that aspect.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us how you came up with the idea for the second Bookish Baker mystery. I know you're a pantser, but once you have your first book done, how do you figure out what happens next for your characters?
Yeah, which is tricky. So because I am a complete pantser, I don't outline. The idea of outlines is like, no. But I love the Great British Baking Show. And so I don't know if anybody else does, but I think it's fabulous. And I love it. I love Paul Hollywood. And I used to love the original Mary Berry. And then they keep changing. We still have Paul Hollywood. So I was actually in the middle of watching that. And I thought, oh, Teddy's a baker. I could do. And so that's where I got the idea to have it start and revolve around their own baking show, their own bake-off. And so it was all because, I'm such a big fan of that show. And I went, okay. And because the other thing for me, so then again, total pantser, then I have to figure out, well, who am I going to kill? Who's going to be the dead body? So I have to, think about who do I have in town, or who can I create that maybe, because Les wasn't in the first book. We never saw him. And so he was, perfect. And so then from there, for me, it's just, I know everybody's different on their own writing process, but I show up every day. And my journalism training is great for this, because it's like, you have to sit down and you have to write a story and you've got to produce, because we have a deadline. And so that's how I work. And I just sit down and I show up and I just let the words flow. And I don't know. And periodically, it's like, oh, I didn't know they were going to do that. I mean, that happens a lot. And so, sometimes I try to plan it, but every single time I try to plan, I used to do that in my chicklet too. In my second chicklet novel, I sort of did plan. And then halfway through the book, it's like, oh no, and I had to change, I had to go back. And so I just said, I'm not a planner. I'm not a plotter. It doesn't work for me. It actually stifles me. And so I just stopped and I just sit down and it just kind of unfolds naturally, thankfully.
So do you know who the murderer is going to be before you start writing?
Well,
that's the thing that gets me.
Yes. Okay. So in this case, on book one, Murder Most Sweet, that same editor, developmental editor, which was actually Terry Bischoff, who's an editor at Crooked Lane. Yeah. But she has a side business. And so it wasn't that she was editing me as a Crooked Lane person. This was before I ever had a contract. But she said to me, again, my first mystery, I've never written one. And she told me, I love this book. I love the stuff about breast cancer. I love the stuff about menopause. I love all that. I love this. I love the food, but your murderer doesn't work. And I'm like, oh no, oh my gosh. And this was after everything was done. And I was really, my agent was waiting to get this out there. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So then I had to go back and go through and go, all right, who else could it be, and change it. And then I did, and then rewrite. I didn't have to, obviously I had to put in more red herrings and all that. But on this, in Deadly Delights, I sort of, when I started the book, I thought, I know it's going to be so-and-so. And then as the book unfolded, it was like, oh, well, wait a minute. And then it twisted, and then it twisted again. And So as I said before the group all got here, you know, I was delighted that this pantser Publishers Weekly called it a twisty plot, because it's like, oh, I did a twisty plot and I don't plot. So again, that was just a happy accident. I did have a plan for who it would be, and that changed as the book.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because it was twisty. Yeah.
Yeah, in
I
fact,
was guessing till the end.
I was pleased because so far everybody I've talked to, they've said, I did not plan, I did not know. Book one, unfortunately, people did kind of figure out, well, that of course, but I had to hurry up and change the murderer. So, you know, that one
Yeah.
I don't feel as bad about, but I was delighted that in book two, people didn't have a clue. So yay.
So you talked a little bit about this, about, you know, how your journalism background really taught you to just show up and write. But I know that for a while you weren't publishing, and you were also working for the state, and you wrote these books, most of these books, while you were still working for the state. So how did you do that? I mean, did you have a set time? Did you wake up early in the morning, stay up late?
Well, I'm a little bit obsessive when I write. And so, yeah, I was actually, I wrote Murder Most Sweet, Hope, Faith, and a Corpse, and Deadly Delights all while I was still working for the state. And yeah, I am a morning person, so I like to get up early. So I'll write in the morning. I could get in I might get up at 5:30 or so and get in a couple hours. Mornings are always my best time. I would also, when I have to, I'd write at night, but weekends, definitely Saturdays and Sundays, I'd start in the morning, and then I'd put in a good 6 to 7 hours each weekend day. Because I mean, I don't have children, and so it's much easier for me. But yeah, I'm really a morning person. I do write at night, but I find I'm just not as it doesn't work as well for me. It's much better for me in the morning. So but you know, prior to working for the state, because I was only at the state 11 years prior to that, I did get to stay. I had the good fortune to stay home for about a decade and write full time because of my husband's job, and you know, so that was great. But yeah, work for the state. In fact, I'll tell you a little story, because the pandemic, of course, the pandemic happened right when I was starting to write book 3, and I knew that I was going to be retiring, but I don't know about everybody else, but for me, pandemic totally freaked me out those first 2 months, and I couldn't read anything. Every time I'd try, I couldn't focus, and trying to write a book, are you crazy? It just did not happen. So I had a very small amount of the book done when it started. My deadline was July 15th. The pandemic started in March, basically. I think I had 2 chapters written in March and didn't do anything the rest of March, April, part of May. And then I finally started. And so basically Deadly Delights was written in 2.5 months, because I did retire the end of May, hallelujah. And then at that point, it was the most crazed writing I've ever done in my life. And I was writing 12, 14-hour days. Because,
Wow.
you know.
Were you freaking out? That's making me freak out thinking about that.
Well, what I did say to my agent was, I said, I don't think I'm going to make that July 1 deadline. And he goes, well, Laura, you know, you're with a new publisher. He says, I understand. He says, I'd really rather not ask, but he says, I'll ask for a 2-week extension, but I don't want to ask for more than that, because it's just, you know, I mean, I said, well, I've already done the 2, and they signed. He goes, yeah, but you had those finished. This is the first one that you're doing from scratch for them. So it's like, oh, okay. So he got me a 2-week extension, and that's why I killed myself. So I did finish, and I didn't edit as much as I would normally. And I was scared. I'll tell you, when I finished that and turned it in, I was so scared. I thought, oh my God, it's just going to be horrible, and she's going to hate it, and blah, blah, blah. And I went through all that neurotic stuff that we tend to do. But thankfully, she liked it. I mean, obviously there were some issues. Some things were a little bit too over the top, and some things were, you know, so, but I've had a great editor. Her name's Faith Black Ross. I've loved every editor I've ever had. I've been very fortunate to have. And I think editors, what would we do without our editors? Because they can see things we can't see. We're too close.
Right.
So she was able to say things. And then once she did, it was like, oh, great, of course. And, you know, we worked really well together. So it turned out okay. But I don't ever want to write a book, a novel, a mystery novel, for God's sake, in 2.5 months again, because that just about did me in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, about Deadly Delights, one of the scenes that I loved was in the Candy Club, which was, for those of you who haven't had a chance to or haven't gotten there yet, it's an exotic dance club. And it was because Teddy and her best friend were kind of going undercover. So they wanted to talk to one of the exotic dancers, stripper, pole dancer, right? And so, first of all, what made you think of including a pole dancer in your cozy mystery? And then, which is set in a small town, right? And
Right.
then, what kind of research did you have to do?
Well, I went pole dancing. No, I did not. I did not. I will never do that as long as I live. But so I actually have a friend who is a very athletic person, and we used to be in a book club together, and probably 6 or 7 years ago, she happened to casually mention one night at a book club, she said, oh yeah, there's this new thing I'm doing at the gym now, and it's a pole dancing class. And we went, what? And where have you, we all assumed that the natural, which is, oh my God, are you stripping now? And she said, no, it really strengthens your core. And so I had that in the back of my mind, that this friend who is not a stripper, who is not an exotic dancer, but it was a new part of her athletic workout. And it's like, well, that's interesting. And because the guy who gets killed was such a lech, it just seemed natural he'd be the kind of guy that would go to strip bars and things like that. And I thought, oh. And so then it became, oh, well, one of those people could be a murder suspect. So I wanted Teddy and her best friend Char to go undercover. And so they did. I will admit that in the first draft that my agent thankfully did say, I think we need to change that a bit. I was gonna, it was a little more, almost not quite R-rated, but definitely not G. So she said, we need to make that a little, I said, okay, because I'd never done that before. But as far as the research, in addition to talking to this friend, because I said, I needed to describe this a little bit. So tell me. So she did, she explained it. And then I went online and I actually looked and I Googled, of course, Google as our friend, in Wisconsin, in the general southern, and there had actually been a club that had been busted and shut down because they were dealing drugs and everything. So it wasn't just that, but in it, there were interviews with some of the exotic dancers, and which, that's how they bill it. They don't bill them as strippers, they build them as exotic dancers. So I got those interviews, and then I did more digging and found some stories from women who'd been and I thought, okay, so it was a fascinating world. It's like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I don't ever want to go to one of those places myself personally, but I was able to paint the picture, softened, and give it a GPG 13 for a cozy.
Jessica was saying in the chat, she was saying that she loved that you got away with putting a strip club visit in your cozy, and it was a really funny scene. And she also said that there's a whole group of people trying to get pole fitness approved as an Olympic sport.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Who knew?
Okay, so I know that you're also a big movie buff.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, if your movie were, or if your book were ever to be made into a movie, who would you want to star in it?
Okay, so for Teddy, either Anne Hathaway. I think she's fabulous, and she's got, because Teddy's a brunette, so got to be a brunette, and in her 40s, so early 40s. So I thought Anne Hathaway, and also or Zoe Deschanel, because Zoe's got that quirky. In fact, I'm almost thinking Zoe kind of wins out over Anne Hathaway because she's got that quirkiness to her and she's funny. So, and Teddy's very funny. So I thought that would be good. And of course, Tavish Bentley, the love interest, I said he looked remarkably like Colin Firth. So if Colin Firth could be 20 years younger, then that's who it would be. But since he's not, then my second choice would be Matthew Good. And Matthew Good is the drop dead gorgeous Englishman who played in Downton Abbey when Lady Mary, her second husband, the dark-haired guy who was the race car driver. That's Matthew Good. And and then for her two best friends, Char and Sharon. Now, I don't know if anybody's a Doctor Who fan, but I'm not really now, but I was a big Doctor Who fan. I love David Tennant and I love Matt Smith. And in the Matt Smith Doctor Who series, one of his companions was Amy Pond, and the actress is an English actress named Karen Gillan, and she's red-haired, and I think she's in Guardians of the Galaxy, but her hair's all shaved or something. I didn't see the whole thing, so I don't know. But she was also in the remake of Jumanji that The Rock was in, and she's very athletic and fit, and she's got this long, bright red hair, and she's just fun. So I thought she would be great. And if not her, then Amy Adams. And then for Sharon, which is their blonde friend, I thought either Reese Witherspoon or Rachel McAdams.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, those are all good choices. Yeah. So, as a lifelong mystery reader, what were some of your favorites?
okay.
And are there any new ones in there too?
Yes, actually there are. So like you mentioned growing up, that Trixie Belden started me, you know, when I was a kid. And then interestingly enough, I went to high school in Phoenix, Arizona, and there was a class in school my junior year, and it was called, for an English class, one of the choices was reading mystery novels. And all you did in that class was read a novel, and every week you had to give a book report. Is that heaven or what? All I had to do was read.
Yeah, I would have loved that class.
So I loved it so much that my senior year, I became an aide in the class, so I could still do it again. So in that time, which was, I'm showing my age, which was the 70s, I graduated in 74. So at that time, I loved Phyllis Whitney, Victoria Holt, Mary Stewart, all those kind of things. That's when I first started reading Agatha Christie as well. So that was then. In more recent years, one of my all-time favorites is, I adore Louise Penny. I think, you know, she writes, you know, what can you say? She's amazing. I love Armand Gamache. I think he's one of the most noble characters in mystery, in crime fiction. I love him. So I love her. But I'm a huge fan of Laurie R. King, and I love the Mary Russell Holmes series. I think it's fabulous. I love Deborah Crombie, because I'm such an Anglophile. Anything set in England
is one of my favorites.
is always Deborah Crombie with Duncan Kincaid and Gemma. Fabulous. I also like Anne Perry, which is historical fiction. The William Monk, Inspector Monk mysteries, and the Thomas and Charlotte Pitt. Those are terrific. And for fun, I don't know if anybody's read Alan Bradley's mysteries about Flavia de Luce. I think they're billed as a young adult because she's, you know, a kid, but it's so quirky and such an unusual protagonist. So absolutely delightful, love them. And then I also like Donna Leone, the Guido Bernetti series set in Venice.
Oh, yeah, I love those.
Yeah. And then a friend of mine, another Crooked Lane author, her name's Connie Berry, and she writes the Kate Hamilton series. And Kate is an American antiques dealer and appraiser, but she's in England all the time, and she's now engaged to an Englishman. So I'd read the first one a few years ago when it came out, and then I'd kind of gotten sidetracked. And this last year I read the next three, and they're absolutely delightful. I mean,
I've been meaning to catch her books because I took a class from her online, and she was great. And it sounded like something that was right up your alley too.
If you're an Anglophile, you will love them. And you asked about new favorites. And so I've been hearing forever, you know, you always hear, you go to conferences, you're online, and you hear everybody, different people, and you can't get to everybody. So I've been hearing about Ellie Griffiths forever. Another Englishman, but I'd never read her Ruth Galloway series. So finally, about 6 months ago, I read the first Ruth Galloway and just loved it. So now I need to get the others. And Michael and I, we always, on Sunday nights, it's our English mystery night. And so we have Acorn, we have BritBox, we have all these English mysteries, but we love Vera with, of course, you know, Anne Cleeve's Vera. So I watched Vera and Shetland for years, but I'd never read any of the books. I couldn't believe it. So finally, I found the very first Vera book, which is called Raven Black. Yeah, Raven Black. And I read that a couple months ago and loved it. So now after having finally read the first Vera, now I need to read the others. So
now you have a whole bunch to read.
I know. They're some of these may be older to other people, but I just hadn't gotten to them. So
and then her Shetland series is really good too. And then she has a new one.
Yes, which I'd seen. I forget what it's called, Matthew something or other. Matthew Venn, I think. We watched that. So we watched all of them, but now I just have to read them. So anyway.
Well, so tell us what you're up to now, and talk to us a little bit about your memoir.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Well, first of all, I will talk about the memoir because it is the book of my soul. And it took a long time for this to get published. Thank you for showing that. So I never planned to be an indie author because I've been very spoiled by traditional publishers. And you know, I'm 65 now, and I've just never been, my brain, I'm not a left brain person. I'm totally right brain creative. So technology is not my friend.
Right.
And so I just thought, when you indie publish, there's so much you have to do on the back end. And it just for you, it's like, no way, I'm never, ever, I was just determined I will never do it. It's great for people who are good at that and who want to, you know, more power to them, but I just wasn't going to do it. But after my agent, you know, loved the memoir. He told me early on, he said, Laura, 3 things will get a memoir published. Number 1, first and foremost, it's got to be a celebrity. That will, you know, they're all over the place. Number 2, it would be around like some massive event, like, you know, 9/11 or, you know, or something, and you survive that. He goes, and number 3 is fabulous writing. He says, we're going to go with the writing for you, and we're going to hope that editors will overlook your lack of a platform. And he started trying to pitch this almost 9 years ago. And, you know, it was just, oh my gosh, I love the writing, but oh, she doesn't have, and that time, that was before Twitter, at least before me and Twitter. So, you know, I just kept getting rejected, and then we put it away, and then I'd change, blah, blah, blah. So for several years on and off, but my agent thankfully believed in it and said, Laura, I just, if we can just find, all we need is one editor who will love the writing so much they won't care about your lack of platform. Well, guess what? We never found that editor. So I finally, and in today, of course, with Twitter and TikTok and everything, I just knew there was no, I mean, I finally joined Twitter, and I think at the time I said, hey, I have 1,000 followers. So I have an active following now. And he went, Laura, they want you to have 50,000, 50,000.
Yeah.
That will never happen. So because it is such an important book to me, I just said, well, then I guess I'm going to have to suck it up and indie publish, but I don't want to do it because I don't know how to do all that stuff. And my agent happened to suggest, a fellow agent in the agency had just started helping publishers do self-publishing. You pay her and she does all the stuff in the bet I didn't want to have to do. And that's what I did. So I worked, and it's called the Lab Publishers, and I'm like only the second book they've done. So,
wow.
So I worked with her, and she was great. And, you know, finally it did come out. There were still a couple little things that I had to do on my end, business-wise and whatever. The fun thing is I got to pick, you know, choose the cover and say, oh, this is what I love what they did with the cover. Yeah. And photos for the inside of the book. So some of that stuff was really fun to do. But I will honestly tell you that I don't ever want to indie publish again, because I've just been too spoiled by traditional publishing. I'm so glad I did it, because had I not done it, this book that means the most to me than probably any book I've ever written is now out there and people can get it. So,
right.
And it's at indie stores and wherever. So that's my story. And I know there are people who are great at indie publishing. I'm so not. So, you know, and then what you asked, what was next? Okay, so I'll let you guys in on a little secret. So again, pandemic last year, right around, because I lived in England and I was stationed in the Air Force in England, and I also love Rosamund Pilcher and Maeve Binchy, those kind of books. And when I was stationed over there, one of the things I noticed, because again, this is before email, or anything, this was the late 70s. So, you know, all of us that were on base, we couldn't wait to get letters from home, you know. And I kind of thought, oh, someday I want to write a book about, you know, a woman in England, and, you know, and I wanted to wander in the military. So I knew those little bits. And that was over 40 years ago. I had that idea, but there wasn't that much to it. And then several years ago, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society came out, which I absolutely adored. I've read it 4 times, one of my favorite books. And I went, oh my gosh, the whole thing is in letters. And I knew I didn't want to copy that, but I thought, oh, so see, that did work, and blah, blah, blah. And it's around World War II, and which I love. So during the pandemic last year, I just started thinking more. I'd always wanted to write something about World War II set in England. And suddenly I'm sitting in the living room, and the opening scene came into my head. And it was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I wrote it. And then it gave me the title, which I'm not going to say because it hasn't sold and I can't reveal that yet. So I started writing it, and I so I did my first historical. It's not a mystery. I didn't know I could write a historical. I didn't know I could write a mystery. Each time it's like,
Right.
I didn't know I could do
Right.
this. And thankfully, and I will honestly say it was the most fabulous writing experience of my life. So it's the 22nd book I've written. And I loved it. I loved doing the research. I loved immersing myself in England and all of World War II. And I'll say a little bit about it. I don't want to say too much again, because it's on submission and you don't want to talk too much and jinx anything, but it's World War II from the women left behind, the women on the home front, from their perspective. So there's a few women and it's told from their perspective. Also, the first time I've not written in first person. Never done that before either. So but I loved every minute of writing that. So it's been out on submission for a while. And I did want to throw that out there just as for those of you who I don't know if you guys follow some of the publishing Twitter threads, but I've been hearing people saying for a while, oh my God, submission is taking forever. And in fact, I heard one agent say like a few months ago in April or something, she goes, I finally sold 2 books that have been on submission since February 21. And this was now in April of 22. And I thought, oh my God. So then I didn't feel so bad that mine's been out there 4 or 5 months. But
Right.
so yeah, now we're on 6 months. But my agent, and I was nervous and I was freaking out a little bit like, oh no. And he goes, Laura, no, because I think, and he does agree that it's the best novel I've ever written. And he says, it's going to sell. Trust me, it is going to sell. He said, it's just slow right now. And you just have to be patient. And I said, okay. And he goes, why don't you start working on your next book? So I had another World War II idea, but this one's a mystery. So
Yay!
I have just started working and doing my research, and I'm just getting into that. So, yep. So right now, Laura, it's everything. Laura is World War II and England for me, because that's, my favorite time frame, my favorite place. So
Well, that's the fun thing about writing fiction, right? We can stay in our favorite time frame and our favorite place.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us and share, some insight into your writing world. Let's go ahead and open up to questions. I know Andrea did have a question. I don't know if I got caught, but she was asking about, or I don't know, Andrea, is she still here? Do you want to go ahead and ask that? She was asking a little bit about the relationships between the women in your books, or in the Cozy Mysteries.
I really like how the women have their own personalities, and it's okay to have relationships between them. And they're very strong. Did you purposely do that? Was that part of what you wanted to do, to show how strong those relationships can be?
Yep. Yes.
Oh,
definitely. Because, don't we all have girlfriends? And I couldn't live without my girlfriends. And so I just wanted to show that. And I wanted them to be strong women and fun women. And, everything up until the World War II novel and the memoir, everything in my life that I've written since I started writing books has been humor. And so I wanted funny and I wanted strong, and I just wanted to show and to celebrate the friendships of women. So that's really important for me.
you also cross some age issues. The relationships aren't the same age, that we all need people of different ages, older,
Yes.
and younger, and you bring that out in the book.
Yes. Because some of that is true in my own, like I said, I'm 65. But I, in my 50s, one of my, a dear friend that I made, she was 20 years older than me. I've always been drawn to older people for some reason. And, maybe because I'm an old soul, I don't know, or just old fashioned, whatever. But so I've always had friends that are older, and I, in particular, had made this one friend 20 years older than me, and we just got along great. And I thought, well, I want to show that it doesn't have to all be. And I couldn't see myself writing about a 20-something woman, because I haven't been 20-something in a long time. And now my chicklet novels that I did, back in the day, in 2005, the first one came out, that was 20-something and 30-something. But, I'm 65 now. I wanted to, but, I knew that I actually had thought about maybe writing something about people in their 60s and was told, oh, those don't sell. It's like, okay, whatever. So I went with the 40s, and, you know, but I did want to show that there were, and I also wanted to show in Murder Most Sweet, and also in Hope, Faith, and a Corpse, I like to have the occasional child, even though I don't have children, but I've had great relationships with nieces and nephews. And I think toddlers are the most adorable things on the planet. So I wanted to input a little of that here and there. But yeah, I think it gets boring if we're all the same and it's all the same age group. So I think mixing it up is great.
You did a good job of mixing it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you guys want, you can go ahead and turn on your videos so we can see faces. If you're comfortable. And then I don't know who is going to ask some of the questions that we.
I've got a few questions here that came up during the first one was your culinary descriptions are so good. Can't read it all right now. Hold on. Do you enter baking contests?
Do I have?
Yes.
Oh, no, actually, and I have a confession to make. I'm not a very good baker, but my husband is an amazing baker. So we set up while I was working on my cozies, we called it the Cozy Kitchen, and he started coming up with recipes. I said, honey, I need some good cookie recipes. I need some good this. So he did it. And then we tried him out on friends, and I can do, you know, a couple things. Actually, I do make at Christmas time every year, peanut butter blossoms. I am good at that, but beyond that, not so great. So most of the recipes came from my husband because he's an amazing baker and cook. Nice. So, and I love, unfortunately, I have a sweet tooth. So I love to eat sweet things, but as far as baking them, I'm not that good at it. So I used him, and the first cozy I ever read was the Diane Mott Davidson Mysteries, where it was Goldie Schultz was the caterer in Aspen. I don't know if anybody's read those, but I loved him. And I loved the descriptions of the food she did because my mouth would be watering. And so I kind of had that in my head when I started mine. I thought, you know, I want to make people get hungry and want to eat these things. So that was kind of helped inform me on that.
Then I had a question about, do you feel restricted at all by the cozy label?
No, not really. Well, you know, I'm not sure that I don't know if I'll be writing any more cozies because, again, being honest, my books didn't sell enough for my publisher to give me another deal. Now, you know this, but not everybody does, but recently, much to my surprise and delight, they did put Murder Most Sweet on a special BookBub deal on Amazon a few days ago, last week. And it's just kind of skyrocketed and the sales went crazy because, of course, they discounted it deeply. And I, you know, got to the top of a couple cozy lists on Amazon. I was #1 in 3 different categories, like, whoa, wow. And so that was pretty exciting. But prior to that, I'll tell you, my sales weren't good enough to get another deal. And so, you know, I'm not sure, will I be writing more cozies? I don't know. Right now, I'm so entranced with historical fiction and World War II. I don't know. But also part of my background, my chick lit novels I used to be in the past, which is part of the reason my subtitle, my memoir is about overcoming rape, breast cancer, and fundamentalism. I used to be a fundamentalist / evangelical Christian ages ago, and my chick lit novels were all written for the Christian market. And so if you think cozies are restrictive, let me just tell you that the Christian market, writing for them, is very restrictive. And, you know, you can't have gambling. You really can't have drinking, certainly no sex. And I will confess that the first nonfiction book I did, which was called Dated Jekyll Married Hyde, humor book, I mentioned that my husband and I played strip poker. That was not allowed to stay in the book. And I thought it was because of strip. And they said, oh, no, you can strip because you're married. It's okay because you're married. But poker, no. And so you know what it is instead? It's strip Yahtzee. I'm not kidding you. So when you have a background like that from your writing being censored and restricted, cozies were a piece of cake.
Yeah. Well, again, was it difficult for you to open up your personal life for the memoir? How tough is that to release?
Yes and no. Because I had done it over a period of years. You know, I first started writing it 9 years ago. And at that point, it was a spiritual memoir about leaving the evangelical church and finding a home in the Episcopal church. And that's how the memoir began. And then over time, it just became more. And when I actually mentioned the rape, which I couldn't even say that word for years, could not. It was the thing that must not be named. So I did like one sentence, mentioned it, moved on. And my editor friend, the same one who told me later I should write cozy, said, Laura, she very gently said, don't you think that maybe you should examine that more and kind of show how it impacted your life? And I went, nope. I refused. I wasn't ready. And I said, nope, I'm over that. It was years ago. I moved on. Everything's fine. I'm not going to do that. And also, I didn't want to have the label and be known as that woman who was raped. So, a long time ago, I was very nervous about that. But thankfully, writing the book became a very healing, cathartic process for me. And more in the Me Too movement, so many women are saying, guess what? This happened to me. And as all these young women were speaking out, I thought, if they have the courage to speak out, I think it's finally time after 40 some years that I can speak out too. So I finally did.
Excellent.
And I feel very good about it. Now, I have not told my favorite aunt in Wisconsin about this book, however, because she does not know about that and she would be heartbroken and devastated. So, and she's really not a reader, so I'm not concerned. And she's not on, she doesn't even know how to use a computer. So I'm safe. But yeah, it was hard, but then it was quite a relief. And then I'm glad I did that and I'm proud of it now. So.
On a lighter note, what are peanut butter blossoms?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's a regular peanut butter cookie, right? But then at Christmas time, you make the peanut butter cookie, but then you roll it in a little sugar and then and you bake it. And then right at the end of the baking, you stick a Hershey's Kiss in the middle.
Oh,
So that's the blossom. And then it's just in for not even a full minute and it comes out and oh my gosh, that chocolate melting into peanut butter, chocolate and peanut butter, what could be better? So yeah, I do make those. And I'm good at that.
I think Terry asked, want to know what were some of the things that turned you off to the indie publishing?
Oh, it's just like I said, my brain just does not work with. I don't have what's that line from Working Girl? Melanie Griffith said, she said, I've got a head for business and a bod for sin. I don't have either, but I don't have a head for business. I'm just not good at that. And detail stuff, I can't even use spreadsheets. Okay. I mean, my brain doesn't work that way. And so there were just some detail things. And, if I hadn't hired this one person to do all that other stuff, you've got to get it uploaded on Amazon, on Kindle, you've got to do this, you've got to I just can't do that. And so I needed someone else to do it for me. And again, because I've been so spoiled, I haven't really marketed it that much because for me, this book was not about getting sales. This book just was my heart book, my soul book. And I wanted it out there. I needed to write it and I needed it to be in the world. So yeah. So if you look at the ranking on Amazon, it's pretty horrendous, but whatever. I don't care. That's not why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
So.
All right. What advice can you offer for some of the inspiring writers in our organization or any
Well, the biggest thing I'm going to tell you is sit your butt in the chair and write. I'm sure we've all heard this. Anytime people find out you're a writer and you write books, they go, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, but I just don't have the time. Well, then you're never going to write it, and there's always, and there are even, I have a couple friends that are incredible, gorgeous writers. I have one friend I've known for ages. He's one of the most beautiful, but he cannot get him. He's been working on one book for I'd say 15 years now, but he just doesn't follow through. And again, I'm so grateful to my journalism background because it taught me how to write tight. I think that's important. It taught you get the lead in the first paragraph, the who, what, where, when, and why. Now you don't do that in fiction, but you definitely got to grab your reader in that first paragraph. There's this amazing book that I highly recommend. It's called The First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman, who's a New York agent. And he actually says, people tell you that when editors look at submissions, all they're going to look at is the first 5 pages. He goes, I'm here to tell you that that is not true. It really gets down to it. It's like the first 5 lines. That's where you have a chance to grab their interest. And so that book, that and Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, which I adore, it's like, and I already had that background from journalism about you get the reader right away, get them, and write tight and write short. And so, you know, I just think you got to do it. And then other people would say, well, I have children and I have a job. And it's like, yeah, okay, granted, I don't have children, but I did have a job up until, 2 years ago. Every single book so the only book I haven't written while working was Deadly Delights. All 20 of my other books were all written when I was a full-time worker. Well, no, that's not entirely true. Sorry, I forgot, I lied. Back in the day, there was that brief period where I got to write at home. But if you love it, then why would you not do what you love? You find time and you do it whenever, even if it's only 15. Don't just stop with the excuses and get your butt in the chair and start writing.
Yep. Well, this is my question. Lester, based on a real person or all fictional?
No, that was totally fictional. That was totally fictional. Although, as I was writing them, I kind of did have some memories of back when I was in the Air Force, and there were some good old boys who, were just a little bit too touchy-feely.
Yeah.
But that was the 70s too. So different world, different time. But no, Lester was a creation from fiction. But I suppose, some of those memories did come back to me.
Well, this is my position is a chat privilege here. I want to know about that Danish pastry you're talking about. What was the name of it again?
Oh, Kringle,
Kringles.
Kringle. And Trader Joe's does carry it periodically, usually around the holidays. But if they don't have it, go online to onhbakery.com. It's in Racine, my hometown, and they will ship them. I have given those as presents, like to my editor, my agent, and they all go, oh my God, I've never had anything so amazing. And it's actually in a circular oval. So it's a flat pastry, fruit filled usually. And with all these layers of pastry, it's a 3-day process to make this pastry. And it's incredible. So your life will change if you have Kringle.
The reason I ask is my grandmother was from Copenhagen. My mother's from Copenhagen. And now my sister's making these called Kleine. Did you ever Kleine? The little twisty deep
Oh,
fried?
yes. Yep. Because I'm Norwegian and Danish as well. So
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
We're bonded.
Yes.
Well, anyone else have any questions? Oh, more Teddy novels? Question mark.
Well, I have an idea for another one, and guess what? It would be set in England, where Teddy would go over to the Cotswolds, which is one of my favorite places in the world, where Tavish lives. But as I said, right now, my publisher did not give me a deal for any more. So I'm not saying I'll never write them. I've just set that aside, but I'm not going to indie publish. So, if a publisher doesn't give me a deal, it's not going to happen. But right now I'm just so entranced with England and World War II. And this next book there's going to be a lot of research involved. So it probably will take me a good year. It will not be a book written in 2.5 months. So I'll be very busy with World War II for a little while. But, eventually I'd kind of like to tie Teddy up, wait, that sounds weird. I'd like to tie up that series with this last, I had her go to exotic dance bar. My goodness, what next? I'd like to kind of tie that up and finish it, but we'll see. It may not happen.
Well, any other question? Any hands up? Anyone have a question out there? I've exhausted my resources here. Well, Jennifer, back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Thank
it was
you.
really great chatting with you. This is really fun for me.
Thank you.
My first time doing this. So.
No,